beloved teachers, and dear friends. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this meaningful occasion as we gather to celebrate Ambedkar Jayanti, honoring the birth anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a visionary leader, social reformer, and the architect of the Indian Constitution. On this special day, we remember his powerful message: educate, agitate, organize. A call that continues to inspire generations towards equality and justice. Let us begin this auspicious program by invoking the blessings of the Almighty. I invite Hamna Pevi to lead us in the prayer.
ആലന്തയാലുവായി ദാക്ഷിണ്യശാലിയായി വാഴുന്നോരീശ്വര തിരുനാമത്തിൽ നിഖില ലോകങ്ങൾക്കുമേകരക്ഷകനാകും അഖിലേശ്വരനല്ലയോ സകല സ്തുതിയും അഖിലേശ്വരനല്ലയോ സകല സ്തുതിയും പരമകാരുണ്യവാൻ കരുണാനിധിയെ വിധി പറയും ദിവസത്തിനേകാധിപനെ നിയതമാരാധിപ്പൂ ഞങ്ങളങ്ങയെ മാത്രം സതതം സഹായമർത്തിപ്പതും തിരുമുമ്പിൽ നയിക്കണം ഞങ്ങളെ നേരായ മാർഗത്തിൽ നിന്നനുഗ്രഹപാത്രമായോർത്തന്മാർഗത്തിൽ അങ്ങയാൽ കോപിക്കപ്പെട്ടോരുടെ വഴിയല്ല സന്മാർഗഭ്രഷ്ടർ തൻ വഴിയിലുമല്ല ആനന്ദയാലുവായി ദാക്ഷിണ്യശാലിയായി വാഴുന്നോരീശ്വര തിരുനാമത്തിൽ നിഖില ലോകങ്ങൾക്കുമേകരക്ഷകനാകും അഖിലേശ്വരനല്ലയോ സകല സ്തുതിയും അഖിലേശ്വരനല്ലയോ സകല സ്തുതിയും അഖിലേശ്വരനല്ലയോ സകല സ്തുതിയും.
Thank you, Hamna. Now, to formally welcome this gathering, I invite Dr. Naufalki, our respected principal, MI Training College, to deliver the welcome speech. So, please.
Okay, thank you. Most respected, our today's resource person, Dr. Santosh Juvaka, Program Coordinator, Dr. Ramida, Student Coordinator, and my dear faculties and dear students. We are gathered here to celebrate the 135th birth anniversary of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. As we know, he is a architect of our Indian Constitution. He is a social reformer. Moreover, he is a true visionary leader, as the Nafida has already mentioned. His contribution to our country is unavoidable. He provided a various innovations in our country. So our constitution is the backbone of our country. Apart from, if we consider other countries also, it is the one of the largest and most appreciable constitutions that we have. So as he is one of the social reformer, he fought against the marginalized sections, or he supported the marginalized peoples. In our country, it is unfortunate to say that still in our country we have experiencing different types of social injustice, especially to the marginalized people. And for the past 2 days, we have seen in our media that in our state also, that is in our educational institution, especially from the teachers' side, unexpected or unfortunate things are happening. So in this aspect, this webinar is makes a fruitful one. And as a teacher, as a future teachers, we should understand what is the relevance of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar ideology, how he has contributed to our constitution. That should understand as a future teachers. So with these words, I respectfully invite Dr. Santosh sir. He accepted our invitation, and he is a former PhD research scholar also. So with a warm with warm welcome. I welcome you, sir. And this webinar is coordinated by our IQSC coordinator, Dr. Ramida Rahman, and the student coordinator, and other teachers, other faculties, and other students. I warmly welcome you all. So, in order to introduce our resource person, I invite Dr. Ramida Rahman. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Santosh Juvaka is an independent scholar in political science with a keen research focus on constitutionalism, caste and social exclusion, democratic representation and public policy. He holds PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has previously served as a faculty member at the University of Delhi and Assam Don Bosco University. Dr. Juvaka's research primarily explores the dynamic of constitutional democracy in India, with particular emphasis on the political representation of marginalized communities and issues of social justice. His scholarly contributions have been published in several peer-reviewed journals and edited volumes, reflecting his deep engagement with contemporary socio-political debates. We are indeed privileged to have him with us today to share his insights on this important theme.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, the moment we have all been waiting for, the talk of the day. It is my honor to invite Dr. Santosh Shah, former research scholar from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, to deliver his talk. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Sibiha. Good morning, everyone. Dear Dr. Naupal, for this invitation, I thank you very much. And the IQSC coordinator, Ramita, and student coordinators and their faculty members. I wish everyone, am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yeah, thank you. So I wish everyone Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's birth anniversary greetings with Jai Bhim. And I really honored to be talking to all of you this morning. So my lecture today, as the title goes, Constitutional Morality and Democracy. So revisiting Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's vision of India. Am I visible and audible?
Yes, sir. You are visible. You are audible too.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm developing this paper as a research article to be published in any research journals. So I'll try to make it, I know the students and the future teachers here coming from different academic backgrounds. I'll try to make it simple and understandable. And I will expect that at the end of the lecture, we will have meaningful discussions and question answer session. So primarily, in this paper, I try to revisit constitutional morality as the foundational normative principle, meaning the ethical moral principle in the democratic thought of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So, and this paper, I try to argue that, so this idea of constitutional morality constitutes a theory of democratic civilization rather than a mere interpretative device of constitutional law. So to understand constitutional law through the idea of constitutional morality, so I want to look at it how we can build a democratic theory of democratic civilization. So in this paper, it contends that the constitutional morality in Ambedkar's framework, it operates as a form of internationalized ethical restraints. So the idea is that the subordinates, I mean, this idea of constitutional morality try to subordinates majoritarian impulses, like, and not just majoritarian impulses, and the social hierarchies and inherited inequalities to the principles of liberty. So those principles I just mentioned, the majoritarian impulses, social hierarchies, and age-old inequalities. So these principles must be subordinated with the principles of one, liberty, two, equality, and three, paternity. So while contemporary constitutional discourse, the ideas, debates, discourse around the constitutional idea in India, very often narrows constitutional morality to, let's say, judicial interpretation. So this paper tried to reconstruct the constitutional morality as a sociological and pedagogical condition of democracy. So as all of you are, many of you are B.Ed students, becoming uh, teachers. So how important the pedagogy you everyone understands. So here I understand constitutional morality as a pedagogy, the condition to develop democracy in India. So I'll try to I developed this paper into three arguments broadly. First one, the constitutional morality is a precondition for democratic stability. So not a derivative outcome of constitutional governance. It's not an outcome, but it's a precondition for a democracy to be stable. That is the first argument. Second, India's democratic deficits, whatever limitations we have, they stem from persistence of graded social inequality. I repeat, graded social inequality. So which structurally undermines constitutional egalitarianism. The second argument is very simple, which is that democratic deficits, the limitations, what we have is the result of social inequalities, which try to undermine constitutional promises of egalitarianism. That is second argument. The third, the contemporary crisis of democracy. So some of the issues in the beginning or principle try to highlight that the persistence of various disappearances in our society. So here the third argument of my paper is the crisis of democracy, the contemporary crisis, reflects not constitutional failure. We must understand it's not because this crisis exists because of constitutional failures, but a deeper erosion of constitutional culture and ethical citizenship. So my paper tried to argue that whatever problems we are facing, the democratic crisis, is a result of constitutional cultures and ethical citizenship. So deeper erosion is happening in these two areas. Therefore, we see a whole lot of constitutional crisis. So on what basis I try to argue these three? Let me explain. So largely I draw the arguments on Constituent Assembly debates. The house where experts were sitting, the key player, of course, was Dr. Ambedkar and others. So their debates will be first major source of these arguments. The second, Dr. Ambedkar's lesser discussed interventions on institutional design. So simply people tend to say that Ambedkar is constitution maker, social reformer, etc. But I'll go a little deeper into which are lesser discussed interventions on institutional design. Very meticulously, Dr. Ambedkar intervened in the designing of constitution. And comparative constitutional theory. This is third source, which is comparative constitutional theory, which means the theory of constitution from various other countries, how we compare with others. So on the basis of these three sources, the paper argues that Ambedkar anticipated a form of democratic fragility, in quotes, democratic fragility, so rooted in the distinction between constitutional norms and social practices. It's a very delicate balance. On the one hand, social practices, traditional practices, hierarchies. On the other hand, constitutional norms which expect equality, liberty, fraternity, etc. So therefore, the setup of democracy in India is a sort of fragile. So the article, this particular article, therefore, concludes that constitutional morality must be understood as a continuous process of democratic socialization. One, two, it requires institutional, educational, and cultural reinforcement. The constitutional morality, in simple words, must be reinforced in our everyday socialization. Two, every institution where we work. Three, every educational institution where we study and work. And this entire idea of constitutional morality must become the culture of every citizen in India. So that is a broader outline of my paper. Let me come to little details. Hope you are following me. Is it clear so far? Yeah, thank you. So the problem of democratic form without democratic substance. So it's a very important, which is that India presents one of the most enduring constitutional experiments in the post-colonial governance. You take any countries in South Asia and various other countries, we see that this is celebrated as one of the enduring constitutional experiments. Yet, it simultaneously reveals a persistent tension. What is the tension? The tension is between constitutional form and social substance. What do we mean by? I'll come in detail a little later. So here, formal institutions of democracy, for instance, elections, judiciary, legislature. So all these three coexist with entrenched hierarchies of caste, inequality, and unequal citizenship based on religion, gender, regional balances, race, etc. So it is within this contradiction that Ambedkar's constitutional philosophy acquires analytical significance. We need to analyze it properly. So unlike liberal constitutional theorists, the Western countries, who assume institutional stability through legal design. So they argue that, so to make any country institutions, you make institutions and you expect those institutions to be stable. How can we ensure that? You make it legalize those institutions, then your system will be stable. That is the entire focus of liberal constitutional philosophy. Whereas Ambedkar emphasized that the sociological foundations of constitutional order, not just legal, but there has to be sociological foundation. We need to build a society as a foundation to accept that democracy. So therefore he warned. What did he want? He said that, I quote, democracy in India is only a top dressing on an Indian soil, which is essentially undemocratic. I repeat, democracy in India is only a top dressing on an Indian soil, which is essentially undemocratic. That's where the society need to be democratized. So this insight shifts the analytical focus from constitutional texts as a legal document to social conditions of constitutional survival. Just legal document will not help us. Rather, the society and its transformation becomes fundamental. Therefore, constitutional morality becomes not an abstract virtue, but a structural requirement for democracy to continue in this country. So then let us move on to the idea of constitutional morality. What do you mean by? Point one. So constitutional morality goes beyond judicial interpretation, what judges interpret, whether the Supreme Court or High Courts or any other lower courts. So constitutional morality goes beyond their interpretation. So in the contemporary scholarship, writers, scholars, the constitutional morality is often treated as three things. One, judicial interpretative principle. Simply anyone asks you what do you mean by constitutional morality? The scholars argues that which is simply judicial interpretative principle. And they also say constitutional balancing doctrine. Third, rights expansion mechanism. So they simply say that three things when they argue, when they discuss about constitutional morality. One, judicial interpretative principle. Constitutional balancing doctrine. Three, rights expansion mechanism. So is this, then the question arises, the constitutional morality is simply about these three things? Let us come. However, this reduction obscures Ambedkar's broader intent. What was his intent? For Ambedkar, constitutional morality refers to internalized respect for constitutional values. What do you mean by? So every institution, every citizen need to internalize the respect for constitutional values as we value our family, our tradition, our religion, various other things. Similarly, people, institutions, and those in power, those in opposition, and citizens at large must have to internalize. But they have to internalize, they must internalize respect for constitutional values. Second, restraint on majoritarian power. Ambedkar argued that constitutional morality is nothing but not only respecting, but also you have to restrain majoritarian power, whether it is electoral majority or communal majority, religious majority or election majority. Those who are in majority must restrain their powers. Third, commitment to equality beyond legal compulsion. Meaning, legally there are certain compulsions, therefore we respect equality. No. So simply saying that because law expects us to be respecting everyone, therefore we respect is not sufficient. We have to commit ourselves, whether there is a law or not, we must respect equality. The fourth one, institutional discipline in governance. So institutions, whether A party occupies or party B occupies, they must run the institutions in their everyday governance with discipline, respect towards constitution and its values. So that's what when Ambedkar said constitutional morality means. So recent constitutional analysis by Rajiv Bhargava, Austin emphasizes that constitutional morality is, I quote, the guiding spirit of constitutional governance, requiring coordination of conflicting interests without domination. There has to be constitutional and proper coordination in everyday governance. Obviously, there will be conflicts. So, there has to be coordination without domination of one section over the other. So, let us move on to Ambedkar's normative architecture. So, Ambedkar's constitutional morality, therefore, rests on four pillars. Pillar one, institutional restraint. So, power, whether you are CM or PM, or you are Vijayan or any other new CM, or he will continue, we don't know, right? So, whoever in power, the institutional restraints, the important pillar. The power, as CM, PM, whatever, must operate within within constitutional limits when politically justified. You may politically justify that deciding so and so things on ABC issues. Politically, that suits left front, therefore they do certain things. Ambedkar says that you have to restrain yourself while exercising your power within constitutional limits, even when politically justified. Second pillar is equality of citizenship. So all individuals are equal before the law, this everyone understand, irrespective of social hierarchy. This is a key point. Social hierarchy, whether you are coming from EC background, ST background, or any other. Third, fraternity as social infrastructure. Like infrastructure simply meaning that we have buildings, furniture, etc., etc. Similarly, Ambedkar's normative architecture of constitutional morality, key important pillar is fraternity, which is respecting others' dignity, developing sense of brotherhood, sisterhood, which is as an infrastructure, social infrastructure. And next, democracy requires emotional and ethical solidarity. As I said, I just explained, to succeed and to stable our democracy, it requires emotional and ethical solidarity among the citizens. No matter whether the person is your family member or coming from your religion or any other religion, you must cultivate that emotional and ethical solidarity among the citizens. The next one is rational legal authority. It's very important. Constitutional norms must override customary or religious authority in public life. I repeat, rational legal authority is one of the important pillars of constitutional morality in Ambedkar's conceptualization, which is that constitutional norms must override. Which norms it must override? It must override customary or religious authority in public life. In your family, in your private life, you are free to practice your religion, free to believe in anything. But in public lives, we must follow constitutional norms, not your religious norms or your customary practices that might, in case that goes, may go against the constitutional values. So this configuration, the 4 points, the 4 pillars we have listed, so this configuration reveals that constitutional morality is not merely normative. It's not just ideal or moral. Then what? It is institutional sociology of democracy. To better our democracy, to succeed this democracy, we need to develop it as a social practice without anyone asking you. Right? So what is the theoretical framework I have used in this paper? So this paper situates the idea of the concept of constitutional morality at the intersection of 3 theoretical traditions. The first tradition is liberal constitutionalism. This is developed by Oxford School, Austin, Hart, etc. What is their idea? So, according to liberal constitutionalism, the constitution has a legal constraints on power. First point. Second, rule of law as institutional stabilizer. So, if we follow rule of law, institutions will be stable. So, these are two main focus points of liberal constitutionalism. The second one, Republican democracy, developed by Robert Dahl, Habermas, etc. So, what are their focus points? There are two. One, democracy as deliberation and participation. So, if you ensure deliberation, meaning discussion, debates, running of democracy, and you ensure participation of every section, that will become a good democracy. Point one. The second, institutional legitimacy through public reasoning. So if people become rational, they keep discussing, think, rethink about social affairs, political affairs, your democracy will succeed. This is about Republican democracy. The third, let us come to Ambedkar and social democracy. There are 3 points. Point one, democracy as alienation of annihilation of hierarchy. So for Ambedkar, democracy simply means to remove all forms of hierarchies, then only your democracy succeeds. Second, social equality as precondition of political equality. What do we mean by? Let me make it simple. Political equality, meaning we just had elections in Kerala, right? So every person, no matter whether he is rich or poor, or coming from Trivandrum or Calicut or any other remote village, every person's vote was equally valid, right? So that is political equality. No matter whether you have money or not, you can contest elections, you can start your political party, right? So that's what is political equality. So for Ambedkar, the social democracy is a precondition. Political equality is not sufficient, but social equality has to be there. There has to be respect for irrespective of your social background. Third, Ambedkar diverges from liberalism by insisting that, it's a very key point here. So he changes his position from the liberals. So therefore, we cannot consider Dr. Ambedkar as purely a liberal thinker. So he moves beyond the liberal notions of equality, etc. So by emphasizing Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Hope we are going well. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, Dr. Ambedkar shift from the liberals. He says that law cannot transform society. You simply make any law. That law cannot transform society without moral and social reconstitution. We need to reconstitute our society on the basis of morality, on the basis of fraternity. Until we reframe, reconstitute our society on the basis of these principles by removing hierarchies of all kinds, ensuring social equality, and prioritizing social equality before political equality, then only our democracy can become stable and succeed. So, by stating that To make it more further deeper into what can be simply put Ambedkar's radical contribution in terms of democracy. So, in simple words, democracy as ethical society. Ambedkar's originality, therefore, from liberals, Republican thinkers, and vis-a-vis Dr. Ambedkar. What is so special about, unique about Dr. Ambedkar? So, in one word, we can say that Ambedkar's democracy is ethical society, not just political society. So, therefore, he redefines democracy as a mode of associated living. In simple words, democracy is a mode of associated living. What does it mean? So this definition shift democracy from procedural system to ethical social order. So we just follow procedures and that we say that this is democracy. No, that is not sufficient. We need to shift from procedural system to ethical social order. Second, institutional mechanism to lived practice. So we have institutions, they expect you to do certain things, but we will not live with that. We will not practice it. Third, electoral practice. By conducting every 5 years elections, we know how elections are being fought, how elections are being conducted, the use of money, community, this and that, everyone understands. So therefore, Ambedkar says that we need to move from electoral process to building a moral community. Thus, therefore, constitutional morality is the ethical infrastructure. I repeat, this very key point here. Constitutional morality is the ethical infrastructure of democratic life. So your democratic life to be succeeded, you must develop the infrastructure of ethics. It's based on equality. So further, constitutional morality versus social morality, we need to understand this, which is very important. So and there is a tension. So constitutional morality versus social morality. A foundational insight in Ambedkar's thought is that there is a distinction between constitutional morality and social morality. So these two moral universes often collide rather than reinforce each other. It's always there is tension, conflicts between these two things, constitutional morality and the social morality. So the persistence of, what do you mean by this social morality? Where we see the persistence of hierarchies in social lives. Ambedkar very well understood that Indian society as structured by graded inequality, meaning one above the other. The caste wise, the social wise, it's a graded. So no one is equal in the caste ladder, one above the other. Therefore, everyone feels that there is someone below you. And the person who is at the top will be very happy, and below him, everyone serves him. So the social society in India is structured as graded inequality, particularly through caste system. So this means social morality is not egalitarian but hierarchical. There are hierarchies in our social life. So in hierarchical society, what we'll see? How to understand this hierarchy, how it works. One, so in a hierarchical society, moral worth is assigned by birth, not by citizenship. Your life, the value of your life, you as a person and what is your value is decided by birth, not by citizenship. That is one. Second, social relations are governed by custom rather than constitutional values. The tradition, your custom, etc., governs your lives and your relation with family, society, and the state in practice, not in the paper, right? So rather than constitutional values. Third, hierarchy is normalized as natural order. So people very often say that why there are hierarchies. Even people like, at the younger age, the universities, colleges, after studying political science or Ambedkar, they tend to ask, why these hierarchies? So the common answer we hear is that these hierarchies are natural, common. It's nothing wrong in it. And even people further goes and say that these hierarchies are created by, let's say, maybe God, or they attach with the religion. Therefore, no one will be able to ask any question about these hierarchies. So there's three things. Moral worth is assigned by birth. Second, social relations are governed by custom. Third, hierarchy is normalized as a natural order. So that what is the result? This creates an inherent tension with constitutional morality with so this constitutional morality rests on equality of status, legal personhood, universal citizenship. The above three, as we said, by birth, customs, normalization of hierarchy. So this creates the conflict between below three. One, equality of status, legal personhood, universal citizenship. So Ambedkar therefore warned all of us, which is very clear, a society that normalizes hierarchy cannot spontaneously produce democratic citizenship. It's a very important point. He makes that a society that normalizes hierarchy cannot spontaneously produce democratic citizenship. Therefore, we have the democratic rights, etc., but the citizenship, the sense of that moral democratic citizenship is not being developed. So therefore, what is constitutional morality? How it works? Constitutional morality as corrective force in the realities of social hierarchies. How constitutional morality will work? So constitutional morality will work as corrective force. How it corrects the mistakes. So this is the constitutional morality is meant to counterbalance inherited social inequalities, and it aims to one, prevent domination of social majorities. 2. Protect individual dignity against collective prejudice. 3. Ensure institutional integrity against political pressures. So these three mechanisms, constitutional morality will aim to prevent domination, to protect individual dignity, and to ensure institutional integrity against political pressures. So Ambedkar therefore understood constitutional morality as a transformative social ethics. It is a transformative social ethic, not merely institutional discipline. So let us go further into the Constant Assembly debates, which are largely lesser known or less discussed during the Constant Assembly debates. So most discussions focus on final text of the Constitution, but Ambedkar's intervention in the Constant Assembly reveals deeper theoretical commitments. It's not about making legal institutional structure. The Constitution is not only about making rules, institutions, structures, etc. But it's a political, theoretical debate has taken place, especially through the interventions of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. What he did there? One, warning against majoritarian tyranny. Dr. Ambedkar, in his interventions, argued very well during the debates. Ambedkar repeatedly warned that democracy could degenerate into tyranny of majoritarian impulses if you will not check that. What does it mean? He argued that, let me make simple, constitutional mechanisms are necessary to restrain political majorities. If not, if there is no rules, no constitutional provisions, the majority, as we we have seen in this couple of years how they decides everything. With constitution, these things are happening. Then you imagine without constitutional mechanisms, how difficult the lives would be of socially marginalized, religious minorities, etc. So Ambedkar warned at that time only during the constitution making. Second, democracy must be guided by principles, not numbers alone. It's very important. So you have number, you have majority, people are voting for you, therefore you decide everything, you treat people according to your political principles. That is not democracy. Democracy for Ambedkar must be guided by principles, not numbers alone. Numbers important, majority is important, but that is not sufficient. That must not be alone principle. Third, this anticipates modern concerns about electoral authoritarianism. That's what some of the scholars argued that India is experiencing electoral authoritarianism by simply getting elected. So you are becoming a authoritarian person, right? The CM does not listen to anyone. So this particular leader is very strict, this and that. So I am sure that many of you understand this in case of various states, including in Kerala, right? So leaders are becoming more authoritarian. One single leader decides everything. So let us move on to constitutional methods versus revolutionary methods. So how changes can be brought in the society and ensure democracy function well. Can we go for revolutionary methods or we stick to constitutional methods? It's very important. In one of his most significant speeches, Dr. Ambedkar argued that post-constitutional politics must rely on constitutional methods and rejected extra-constitutional mass mobilization that bypass institutions. We must respect these institutions. Those institutions are built with a lot of theoretical debates and commitments. Therefore, after constitution comes into being, you must have to follow, must not go and adopt extra constitutional mobilizations. So this was not a rejection of protests, we must understand, but a caution that includes one, legitimacy must flow through constitutional channels. Two, disorder can undermine fragile institutions. So therefore, highlights Ambedkar's concern for institutional stability in a diverse society. Our institutions must be made stable. They are already fragile. If you adopt extra constitutional mechanisms of protest, these institutions will collapse. Right? So therefore, he said that we must have to respect institutional designs to protect the stability in the society so that it's very important for the societies like India, which is diverse. Right? So let us go to some comparative constitutional perspective quickly, and then we'll come to the conclusion. Ambedkar's framework in this background gains depth when placed in comparative contexts. So one is the liberal constitutionalism. The liberal theory emphasizes one, rule of law, separation of powers, and protection of rights. However, liberalism often assumes social equality as background condition, as assumption Ambedkar rejected. So liberals assume that social equality as background condition, as an assumption which is Ambedkar rejected. What he says will come to after discussing Republican constitutionalism. So Republican theory emphasizes non-domination, civic virtue, three, public participation. So Ambedkar aligns partially with republicanism, but departs from emphasizing caste as structural domination. So Ambedkar's distinct contribution, let us come to after liberal and Republican, let us come to Ambedkar's contribution and what is the distinct contribution of him. So he combines three things. One, liberal institutionalism, democracy's egalitarianism. So, this synthesis of three makes his theory particularly suited to societies. What does it mean? How this can be done? Through institutional implications of constitutional morality. How our institutions will work by adopting the theory of Ambedkar to make it a social democracy. So, institutions like judiciary has to be independent, principled interpretation has to be there, not based on what you believe. Three, willingness to confront social norms. So then how the legislature has to be, it must ensure reasonable debates, reason, not emotions. Second, minority is a key aspect our legislation must take care. Three, it must avoid populist shortcuts. I mean, what that has to be stopped. So Ambedkar warned that legislative majorities could undermine democracy if unchecked. How civil society or other institutions like civil services, how civil services should function. Administrative institutions must act as guardians of constitutional values, not the followers, simple followers of CMs and PMs. Second, protectors of marginalized citizens. Third, they must be neutral interpreters of policy. So, without ethical bureaucracy, constitutional morality remains aspirational. It cannot be realized. So, despite these institutional mechanisms, we have sociological challenge, which is caste and democratic citizenship. How, when caste is there, how to make constitutional morality a reality. So Ambedkar's sharpest insights on this aspect lies in recognizing that legal abolition does not automatically dismantle social structures.